Hi everyone out there! Hello!
Hello.
Welcome to the Musical QuaranStream. If you haven't joined us before, I am Glen.
And I'm Bree. We're so happy that you decided to spend some time with us on this Saturday afternoon. We know that the world out there is a scary place,
Mm-hmm.
and we try to bring a little bit of light and joy into it every single week by talking about the things, I love most in the whole wide world, aside from, Glenn and Lola and everybody, is musical theater. And we're kind of hoping that we have a little bit of art that is going to kind of change the world soon. And we know a lot of activists and folks are out there trying to do just that right now.
Mm-hmm.
We start with the pandemic. There's
Yeah.
now riots going on. It seems like it is a very hopeless and stressful place right now, but we want to encourage you to, go talk to a counselor or a trusted friend or family member. You're not out there alone. Even this past week, I have been talking about going to get some free counseling that's offered in my area, my neck of the woods, just because Glenn is a very good listener, and the cats are a very good listener, but sometimes it's really good to talk with a professional and just kind of talk about why you might be feeling sad or stressed out. And I thought that seemed like a pretty good thing. So, like next
Yeah.
week, they already got me an appointment, so I'm really excited about that. And I just would like to recommend that for everybody. I always say it's like a spa day, but instead of
Yes.
like massage, it's a spa day for your brain. You get to kind of like unravel some things you've been tossing around in your brain there.
Yeah, and
So.
it is important to take some time to take care of yourself, take care of your mental health in all of this. I talk about this fairly often that I am actually medicated for anxiety and depression. It's somewhat effective. It's not the most effective medication in the world, but I'm able to get on with my day, and seeing a therapist probably would be a good choice for me as well. I think it's honestly a good choice for just about anybody. Just about anybody has something that they can work on.
Yeah, I always say it's not your friends or family's responsibility to carry your emotional burdens.
Mm.
I have my master's in psychology. I didn't go into counseling, but I do know that there's a lot of training that goes involved to kind of being a non-biased professional in these types of situations. And I think sometimes it's just really helpful
Yeah.
because even if your friends or family are willing to do that work and sitting there, that still is a biased perspective. And so I think sometimes it's just really helpful to talk with somebody that this is their job and that's what they've set out their life to do. So I think right now that, be it that today is a little rough in the world out there,
Mhm.
we just kind of wanted to encourage you to make sure that you're taking care of your mental health, and hopefully we can be a little part of that and cheer
Yeah.
you up. But we can't do it all, so.
Yes. And hello, Bristol. We see you guys are out there. Thank you for checking in with us. Um, but yeah, and I always encourage people when things get bad, when things kind of look hopeless and everything. It's like, okay, it's all right to feel that way. It's all right to feel like that is the world that you're living in. But I encourage you, even when it feels hopeless, to try to take some action in your life as though the world is still going to be here tomorrow.
Well, because it is.
Yeah. And that is always my thing, is like, no matter what you see going on, act like there's going to be a life for you to have tomorrow. Um, and that's a very, I guess, simplistic way of looking at things. But I always, nerd alert, I am a huge Doctor Who fan. I know, have been my entire life,
Yeah, it
starting
might
with
might be a good time
yeah,
to put up your handle
yeah.
just to further evidence.
just in case you guys didn't catch that from my Twitter handle here. I have been a Doctor Who fan my entire life, starting with the original series and everything. And I think the moment in the new series that I knew I was going to love this series was the very second episode. The Doctor is showing Rose how the TARDIS works and where it can go in space and time and everything. And he takes her to the far, far distant future to witness the actual like end of the earth, and tells her that it all starts here, but humanity is spread out among the stars on 1,000,000 planets throughout the universe. And he says, you're all so concerned about the things that are going wrong. You're also concerned about the things that could be terrible, about the things that could end everything you know, that sometimes you fail to stop to consider the possibility that you might actually make it, that you might actually live. And I feel like that spoke to me, and that's a very important message that I think I try to get into sometimes in the stuff that I write and that I create. That's part of why on YouTube I'm the film optimist, is I want to be like, we got to consider the possibility that we're going to live. We've got to consider the possibility that things are going to get better. And sometimes it can be hard to feel that possibility, but we got to at least entertain it.
Well, and you got to work for it, too.
Yes.
That's the other thing, is you can't just wait for it to happen.
Yes.
So that's your internet mom and dad encouraging you to be healthy out there and, keep on social distancing.
Yes.
And clunky
Make
transition. So we had hoped that with moving out of our apartment that we would have gotten a deposit back. We were informed that we will not be getting a deposit back, and it's really complex, so I'm not going to get into it here, but now is the perfect time that if you're ever thinking of purchasing our merchandise and supporting the channel, or supporting us in Ko-Fi with the little streamy going below here. I'm in my second week of furlough, so I have a couple more weeks to go here.
Yeah.
So if you can support us, we'd really appreciate it. I did fall into a little bit of a benefit where I had some money come in from my old job. They were audited and found out that I wasn't paid for 40 hours, so that helped a little. We've been able to restock our fridge, so that was great. But it's not going to take care of all of our bills, and so I hate to kind of be the marketing shill here, but it's a really nice shirt. We're going to be getting into the state opening up pretty soon, so if you live in Virginia, maybe add it to your mask as you go out, and remind everybody that it's not enough to wear a mask. They still cannot, breathe in your ear. We still need to do the 6 feet of social distancing.
Yeah.
And we still have, of course, our shirt from the show, so if you want to spread word about our show and tell more folks to watch us, we would like that as well.
Yeah, and the link for our shirt design is below us. It's below us on Twitch. It's going to be below the video in the description on YouTube. And even if you've already purchased a shirt, or you don't have the money to purchase a shirt at this time, you can still help us out by just showing people the shirt. We think it's a very good shirt. We think it sells itself, whether people are into the Musical QuaranStream or not. Virginia is for social distancing I made the design. I was the one who was like, hey, what about a Virginia is for social distancing? So I'm biased, but I think it's a great design, and I think it sells really well.
And I suggested that the distancing is distancing.
Yes, she did.
So that the kerning is further apart than the Virginia part. So.
Yes, I came up with the Virginia is for social distancing with the heart in place of the O, and she came up with make social distancing farther away from the other lines and farther apart in the letters. So it was a team effort on the shirt there. So.
Yep. So, little plug for some merch. I will be starting a second job in a couple weeks. So it's kind of unfortunately at the end of my furlough, where my second job is just starting training. But yeah, we're gonna make it. We got faith. We got the optimism going. But we'd still love your support if you can offer it. If you can't, of course, everybody's going through a very hard time right now. We just talked about for the first 10 minutes of the show. So please don't feel like you must. But we would love it even if you would just spread the word and let people know that we're here. And we always love our social engagement about what we can do to change the show, improve the show, move the show forward, or what you like, and we can kind of bring you more of that.
Yeah, and like Bree said, she is starting a second job. I am studying for an entrance exam for a service that will let me, transcribe audio, which if I get into that, they also have training that I can then, train to be a medical transcriptionist or a legal transcriptionist, which pays a bit more, that sort of thing. So, yeah, we're working trying to make things work. But in the meantime, if you'd like to help us out, or just tell your friends, hey, the QuaranStream is really awesome. Glen and Bree are really cute. And
I'll take it.
All right, so let's see.
This is his pitch. So if you don't remember, this is the last episode. We tend to do 4 episodes per theme or per topic. We had been talking about Disney musicals. I think Disney, it's kind of been at the forefront of musical theater for several decades up at this point. They've always had kind of their own musicals being produced. They've always done like sequels, like Mary Poppins and Mary Poppins Come Back and all that stuff. They also bought out a whole heck of a lot of Times Square in the late 90s, early 2000s, and really made that a family-friendly destination as well. So I think it's safe to say that Disney had a profound impact, which is why we wanted to dedicate 2 weeks to it. I've already done my 2 pitches related to sequels I'd like to see, and particularly good Disney franchises. And so this is Glen's second pitch of what he'd like to see out of a Disney musical.
And the last one that I did, of course, was Hocus Pocus. This one I'm going old school Disney on this one, back to the 1960s, I believe around 1966, if I remember correctly. The Absent-Minded Professor, starring Fred MacMurray. And now this is a movie that when I was a little kid, I would catch on the Disney Channel. You know, back before it became Disney Channel and Disney XD and all of those things.
So I did not have that as a little kid, but I did have church summer camp. So I went to a huge church in Dallas, Texas called All Saints. And we would have after-school care and summer care, and then I would do, like, theater and music and stuff like that there. So I remember in the library, they would always do on, like, Fridays, like, a Disney movie. And so it would be, like, stuff like this.
And for my part, we had basic cable, which Disney was not basic cable at the time. It was premium, like HBO and Cinemax and all of those. But every now and then there'd be a Disney Channel free preview weekend where, like, if you had cable of any kind, you could see Disney Channel for a weekend.
I have a little blurb before we get too far. We have some neighbors moving in upstairs, so if we do hear some thumps or bumps in the night, it's because, unfortunately, it's a very warm day here in Virginia. It's like in the 90s, and these poor folks are moving into the top floor where they have to walk up 3 flights of stairs to get there. So we wish them the best. We feel really bad, but they may be interrupting our stream and our sound, but we'll get through it. It'll be fine.
But, so anyway, I think I had this movie on like a VHS tape as a little kid that we had recorded off of the Disney Channel during a free preview weekend, so it even had like the occasional crawl across the bottom of the screen while it was playing that was like, you know, contact your cable company now to order the Disney Channel, you know. But it was one of those. It showed up, like Bree says, it was a really popular Disney movie to show to kids at events and camps and things like that. It was a show that the Disney Channel is constantly playing, starring Fred MacMurray, and he plays Professor Brainerd, which, you know, 1960s era, not too subtle Disney pun right there. Professor Brainerd.
And also, I think, like, a big push of Disney in the 50s and 60s. Like, my dad talked about when he was in the Air Force, one of his jobs was to try to convince kids in the rural South to go into space aeronautics and stuff like that. So they would take pieces of the shuttle around to, like, Mississippi and Alabama and, like, Florida and go to, like, parking lots, like Albertsons parking lots and, like, schools and stuff. And so I think Disney was pretty much, like, in that business as well in the 50s and 60s of, you know, like we kind of mentioned in Bye Bye Birdie, like, way a long time ago, like, chemicals and science. And I think that this was, like, supposed to be one of those atomic eras, like, hey, if you kids just grow up smart enough, you can change the world.
And Disney himself was a big techno-utopian among other things. Some of them good, some of them not quite as good. But he was a big techno-utopian. That's why Tomorrowland is a thing. That's why...
Which is a great movie, by the way. Don't let anybody tell you different.
Tomorrowland is a great movie. Everybody who has not seen it yet should go check it out. I really love it. Really hopeful movie. Great hopeful messages for the future. But Tomorrowland was a thing because Disney believed technology was going to help humanity become the best version of itself. And that's also why you have things like Epcot Center.
Which I love. That was my favorite thing as a little kid.
Yeah, and Epcot as it exists is not the way he initially imagined it. He imagined this whole scientifically designed community that was like self-sustaining, and he wanted it to be like in the parks as a thing that you could go there and see it in operation. It didn't turn out to be that, but Epcot Center as it exists still reflects a big part of his dream.
One of my favorite things about Epcot Center, I told Glenn I was like, I have to take him because Glenn never got to go, but I got to go when I was like a really little kid, and then I got to go for like high school band and all that stuff. So they have these things called like the land and the seas, and so you see how food is grown. You would get to like have dinner in front of this huge aquarium. It was so neat. And then they had the World Showcase, which of course is lovely, and I loved Mexico. That was my favorite one. And then my favorite thing was there was Figment in the Dreamfinder when I was little, which is not, I mean, I think if you're as old as we are, you know all these, and I think they're resurgence of popularity, but it's not really a big thing now. But there's like, I just remember as a little kid, you could see the fountains that would spit water. I thought that was so cool. There was like little sensors on the floor that you could like make sound and music, and then it was kind of the very first experience I think a lot of us have with iPads now, where you could color on a computer screen, and I love that. And there's this little song that's like, imagination, imagination. So I loved it. It was a purple dragon, and so Epcot was by far my favorite thing as like a 4-year-old, and my dad was like, we had to like drag you from the park, like you just loved it. Like, I mean, everything else was like very lovely and very nice, and I'm sure I loved meeting like Winnie the Pooh and everything, but they're like your favorite thing by far was Epcot.
Oh, by the way, quick moment of like personal trivia here. Not like big trivia, not like when I was a kid or anything like that. But I look for positive signs anywhere that I can. Today I am pitching my idea for The Absent-Minded Professor, the musical. I just found out from Facebook this morning, it is 1 year to the day that I woke up from a dream in which Disney Plus was hiring me to do a CGI/live-action remake of Oliver and Company.
Hey.
Which,
cool.
Of course, dreams always have a weird twist. In that one, it was, the one catch is, if you accept this, and no other director has, Oliver and Company is Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit's absolute favorite movie.
Getting a drink.
And he absolutely loves the song Why Should I Worry? So he's attached to play the role of Dodger, and you can't recast. And in the dream, I remember being like, well, I don't know Mr. Durst personally. I can try working with him. Sure, why not? So I have to feel like there's some sort of kismet here too. I'm pitching a Disney-themed project.
Hey, maybe next year it'll all work out.
Hey, you know.
I will say the other modern piece of Disney like futurism that I love, that is also like I think a really underrated movie, is Meet the Robinsons.
Yes.
I used to do clinical trials from the other side of the bed where I was a participant and not a coordinator. And I remember I had to do like this sleep study, this metabolism study, and literally I remember that was like all they were showing in the hospital was like Meet the Robinsons. So I'm here like getting blood drawn out, having to like go on a treadmill every like 3 hours, and just like watching this movie from start to finish. And it was like, oh, this was really good. I was like, and I mean, I'm emotional at the drop of a hat. I always tell people I've cried everywhere in this stupid town. And I just remember like, oh my God, crying, and like I was like, what is going on? So, I mean, Tomorrowland, George Clooney, Hugh Laurie, very, very good. Meet the Robinsons, very, very good.
Yes.
And I think it kind of harkens back to what things like, you know, what I remember from like the old ones are like
Yeah.
Frankenweenie and
Yeah.
Absent-Minded Professor and stuff like that.
Absent-Minded Professor. I think even to a certain extent, like the Shaggy Dog,
Mm-hmm.
and well, I guess it's more magical than science, but
That sounds like, well, maybe
yeah.
maybe Shaggy Dog, maybe Freaky Friday, but those are much more like
Yeah, those are magical.
fantastical. They're not really science.
Same thing with Herbie, although
Yeah.
Herbie was fun because it was magic in the shape of a car, so there was something fun about that.
Yeah.
But Walt Disney himself had the idea that science is going to make everything better, and with science, man will be able to relax, let go of a lot of the troubles of life, and build something truly great. And
well, that's an example. You know, we've talked about this before, but my dad, I was watching Bill Nye's show on Netflix with him, and the guy was talking about, you know, oh, this is a really big thing, like lettuce doesn't need to be grown with soil, and but people, you know, aren't really excited about it. Like, you know, he was kind of telling a lot of people don't buy it because they're like, oh, well, I don't want this future lettuce. I want soil lettuce. And my dad was like, but that was the dream.
Yes.
He was like, you don't understand like how exciting this is from us who grew up in the 50s and 60s to know we don't have to plant things in dirt. We can plant it in this gel. We can plant it in this styrofoam, and we have crops, and we can go to the moon and go to Mars, or, you know, if we run out of soil, or if we need soil for other things. And so he was just like so angry that they were saying it's so hard to sell this lettuce because people are like, well, I don't want to eat lettuce unless it touch dirt.
and rightfully so, because I can remember I've talked in the past when we talked about the Tecmo musical idea that I loved shows like Beyond 2000 when I was growing up, where they would take you and show you all the new technological advances and be like, hey, look, we're going to be able to like grow protein in a petri dish and make it taste just like beef so that, you know, in the future we won't have to like kill cows to become beef, sort of thing. And
I was just thinking, I was like, except for our cats.
Yes. And Lola's
right here being like, although I would like beef, thank you.
Yes. Lola wants you to know that she can totally take down a cow if necessary. But anyway, all of that kind of ties into, you know, hope for the future, optimism and advancement and things like that. And so, Absent-Minded Professor, probably the most popular thing people remember from Absent-Minded Professor is flubber, the substance that bounces really well. And if you remember, I'd say the two things from this movie that everybody who has seen it remembers. The basketball game, where the players are leaping up into the rafters and things like that, and the flying car.
Yes.
I think those are the two things.
The dog was pretty cute.
The dog is, if you remember three things, you remember the dog. All right, so the movie opens with, and this was a moment I turned to Bree and I was like, well, I know what the first musical number is.
Yes. This was before I fell asleep. So if
Yes.
you missed last week, I fell asleep before this movie ended.
Yes, we rewatched this movie recently, and she fell asleep like about halfway through.
Yeah, about halfway through.
But so it opens with a cold open, which is kind of unusual for movies today. You see it on just about every TV show, but it's this cold open that introduces you to the character of Professor Brainerd. He's the only character you see in the shot, at least at the very beginning of it. And it's him lecturing to his class. He's a professor at this small private college, and he's talking about different forms of energy. And he starts talking about acoustic energy. And he says, and if you're wondering if, you know, he's talking about its sound and sound waves, and he says, and if you're wondering if acoustic energy can actually make any kind of physical change, here, let me show you. And he pulls out a trumpet and starts playing the trumpet straight at a wine glass until the wine glass shatters. Although before it accomplishes that, it like shatters every student's glasses that they're wearing in the class and things like that. And I was like, the principle of acoustic energy is clearly the first song in the show. It's going to set the tone for who this character is and all. And then from that, you go straight into the opening titles for the movie. And then we learn that Professor Brainerd like I said, works at this college.
And is a bit absent-minded.
He's, yes, a bit absent-minded in that he has completely forgotten his own wedding twice and is about to forget it the third time. And this is, when you go back to old movies, there's always the question about, like, oh, what thing from the past that we no longer find acceptable is going to be in this movie? This movie's not too bad about it, but the relationship standards and gender dynamics are a little bit backwards. Yeah.
You can change that.
Just a few comments here and there. Yeah, exactly. You can change that. You modernize that. You make it better. So in this case, we have Brainerd, in the movie, we have Brainerd's fiance is the secretary of the president of the university. She is going to their wedding, being escorted by a man who is Professor Brainerd's romantic rival, who is a professor of Romance languages. Well, they say that he's a professor of Romance languages, but throughout the rest of the movie, they always refer to his English class. English is not a Romance language.
It is when I speak it.
Different kind of romance.
I like not being the straight man in this episode. This is great.
But yeah, it's but he's trying to convince her, like, I'm telling you, it's a big mistake. You should be dating me instead of him. And she's like, no, there's no way he'll screw up and miss it a third time. And I've got to say, yes, Professor Brainerd gets distracted working on his experiment.
Which I think is the second song of the show.
Yes.
Because it's very rhythmic. And it has, like, all these little, like, pitchy beeps and boops and clanks and all this stuff. And I was like, guest musical number written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's like, you know, the...
nice little patter song,
yes.
bit of hip-hop influence.
Yes, it's like the invention of flubber. Ooh.
Yes. You know, a new kind of energy.
Yes.
But he's working on an experiment, and his landlady, or not his landlady, his house cleaner.
Housekeeper, yeah.
Housekeeper comes in to remind him of his wedding, and he gets distracted running back to the board to be like, oh, I've been, like, subtracting when I've been adding when I should have been subtracting all along here. To his credit, while he does get distracted, he does not necessarily forget to go. His lab explodes.
He gets knocked unconscious.
And he spends about 8 to 12 hours laying in the rubble unconscious.
Which is a concern. I was like, wait, nobody checked on him?
What is it? Anything longer than 3 minutes of unconsciousness is a serious concern for potential brain injury, yes. But that's what happens to him. He's laying in the rubble for 8 to 12 hours. Now, when he wakes up, he thinks it's still the evening. He thinks he still has time before his wedding. And it isn't until someone points out to him, his housekeeper showing up for the morning.
It's like 12 hours later.
Points out to him that, no, it's 8 a.m. Your wedding was at 8 p.m. That he realizes anything's gone wrong. But this explosion creates flubber. And flubber is floating rubber. I love that here we have this scientist, a very serious scientist, who's just made, like, the most important discovery ever. And does he give it a Latin name that describes it? No, he calls it flubber.
Well, you gotta understand, this was Kleenex and Velcro. And, I mean, like, come on. This was the 50s. You gotta get a gimmick. You gotta snappy it up.
That's the marketing department's job.
He can do both. He's a professor. He's very smart.
But you have the invention of flubber, and he's been experimenting with flubber, and flubber... Honestly, I was watching it, and I said, everybody always remembers flubber is the bouncy substance. Mm-hmm. I'm like, actually, you know what? If someone invented this today, it would still be the single most important discovery in the history of humankind. Mm-hmm. Because he describes it as he's discovered a new form of energy. And what flubber is the substance and anything that acts on it with energy, Flubber responds by generating twice as much energy. So, in realistic terms, he has created a substance that generates energy out of nothing.
I feel like it would be one of those things where if we harness that energy, we'd all be like living Animal Crossing right now.
Absolutely.
Like, nobody needs to work. Flubber's got it. We already have free power.
Spend your day catching bugs and fish and, sitting around listening to a dog play the guitar. Why not? At that point, it basically is cold fusion, is what they would say in today's science fiction, is what he has invented with Flubber.
Yeah.
But he can't get anybody to stand still and pay attention to him for a few seconds while he talks about this great invention that he's created.
Because he's a bit of a jerk. And also, the university's going through some very serious financial troubles.
Yes. There's a bank that's going to try to cash in.
Not just a bank.
Oh, that's right.
It's a former alumni.
Yes, the bank is owned by an alumnus of the college.
Yes.
Who's made, what is it supposed to be, $1 million?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's so funny because they're like, oh, well, we're in debt to $500,000 to this guy. Without this $500,000, the university won't ever stay open. And me having worked at universities for the past, 20, 25 years, I'm like, ha! I mean, that would be a lovely problem to have, which is $500,000. But this is 1950s where the wealth was a bit more equitably distributed. So he's a millionaire. He has $1 million, but he donated a lot of it to this former institution. But now he's like, pay up. I want my investment back.
Turns out it wasn't a donation; it was a loan from his bank. So now he's eager to foreclose on the college, demolish it, and turn it into a housing development. Their housing tract is what they say. But so you have him trying to talk to his wife, not his wife, his fiancée, who's not convinced she wants to be his fiancée anymore, and the president of the college simultaneously to be like, but no, you have to see this thing that I created.
Which could potentially make him $1 million.
Yes.
And he could save the university. I don't know if that's a plot point because I fell asleep, but could be.
And one of the things as well that is causing all this trouble for the college, he just flunked the banker's son.
Because he wasn't working hard in his class. He didn't earn a good grade, and he flunked him?
Yes.
Unacceptable.
Gave him an F, which also means that the banker's son, who is the star player on the basketball team, isn't allowed to play basketball in their big game with their rival college tonight.
Yeah. You don't do that.
Nope. So, he can't get anybody to listen to it. His girlfriend is expecting to go to the basketball game that night, and he's like, well, I know how I can get her to pay attention to this. I'm going to go pick her up in my old Model T that I've had in my garage this entire time. That's an antique that I've been working on restoring, but it's never run yet. But I just replaced the engine with a chamber full of flubber. And now not only does the Model T run, but it flies. And you have a nice little montage of him flying around with his dog in the car.
Charlie.
Yes, pulls up at the door to pick his girlfriend up, but she's being picked up by the professor of Romance Languages.
Ooh la la.
Yes, who is taking her to the game tonight. By the way, not the professor of Romance Languages from that college, but from the rival college that they're playing that night.
There must have just been, that had to have been a running gag, because that was also kind of the same thing in Bye Bye Birdie and stuff like that. I think that was just if you couldn't get a Latin lover, well, you're going to get a white guy who studied it.
Yes. Which, by the way, I had already at this point been like, I would be like, you have to have this character have an accent in the musical. I would love to have him played by the telenovela star who was in Jane the Virgin as Jane's father.
Yeah, and he does a lot of... He's the new Don Carnage.
Yes.
DuckTales.
Yeah, I would love to see him.
He's really great.
He would be my choice for playing that role on Broadway. But anyway, so he winds up going to the basketball game. Basketball team is losing. Why are they losing? Because all of their players are like 5.5 feet tall, and all of the other team's players are like towering at 7 and 8 feet tall. Like it's literally all of their players only come up to the other players right below their rib cage, sort of thing.
I think we all had high school basketball games like that.
Yes.
Maybe not college. By the time, we went to Virginia Tech where everybody was great, but but I think definitely in my high school, the best kids in our high school was probably not the best kids in all of Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So he's watching them lose. He's listening to his girlfriend and his romantic rival talk about them losing and everything. And he's like, here's how I get people to see how great my invention is. He sneaks into the locker room with flubber that he is pressed on a waffle iron.
Yeah. There's a lot of morally questionable things.
Well, there's
but I
the
think
most morally questionable is coming up.
I think you can still kind of work with that because if he's not a hero, he's not an anti-hero. He is. If you guys have watched our recommendation of She-Ra yet, I always say Entrapta is a really good character for this as well, where she's a really smart person. She loves technology, but it does cause her to switch sides.
Yeah.
First she's in the rebellion, then she's in the Horde, and so she's not a good guy or a bad guy. Her first love is science, and she pursues that. And so I feel like when we were kind of talking about Absent-Minded Professor and kind of the things that he does with Flubber and kind of the choices that he makes, he is kind of the same type of thing where it's he's not a good person, he's not a bad person, but his first love is science.
Yeah. Well, so what he does is he takes this Flubber that he's cooked in a waffle iron, sneaks into the locker room, and attaches it to the soles of all of the players' shoes. And that's where you get the incredibly famous scene everybody remembers of the basketball players. None of them know that the flubber is on their shoes. They just know that suddenly they're jumping high enough in the air that they are literally hanging off of the rafters in the gym. And just in time, they squeak out a victory over the other team by 1 point, which further angers the banker, because the banker, knowing that his son was the star player and wasn't going to be playing that night, bet heavily against the team. And now he's lost a ton of money betting on this basketball game. And Brainerd tries to go up to his fiancée and say, hey, what you saw in there, I did that. That was my thing. I caused that to happen. Great moment with both the fiancé and the romantic rival being like, how dare you try to take credit for those boys playing their heart out there on the field. That was nothing but dedication and hard work and practice. It's dedication, hard work, and practice can't make you jump 20 feet in the air. Okay. Believe me, I've tried. But the great moment of that sort of I'm not willing to listen to your science at this time, when those kids showed heart. So
gotta have heart.
Yeah. So now, feeling, triply snubbed at this point.
Well, it's one of these things having taught smart kids, and I guess having been I was a smart kid. I mean, I'm not trying to be I was so smart. But I feel like sometimes, as somebody who is looking at the world in a unique way, and kind of valuing things like problem solving and science, it's very easy to be labeled as absent-minded, because it's not that you don't value relationships or stuff like that, but it's maybe you spent a little bit too much time solving one problem and not kind of working on how to influence people and win friends. And so I think that it's actually a very realistic struggle, and that's why I kind of like that it's a gray character and kind of nuances, because I think we all know a person or a few, like Dr. Brainerd, especially if you work at a university, or you've been to kind of a gifted kids camp or stuff like that. So I think that that moment of no one really understanding him or listening to him and being socially isolated is really frustrating, especially when he's really trying to make an effort. So I think this is probably one of the most realistic stories we've kind of examined.
And then it leads to his most morally questionable decision
Yes.
in the movie, which is that he decides, using his flying car, that he is going to stalk his romantic rival,
Not good.
and
Not
after
good luck.
he drops off his fiancée, he is going to take his flying car, fly it directly over his romantic rival's car, where he can't be seen, and proceed to bounce his car up and down on the roof of the car below him.
That made our cat run away.
Yes,
She was like, oh no!
Lola saw my hands doing this, and she was like, goodbye! But, and he does that, nearly drives the guy off the road, like, veers off as the guy goes into a tunnel. When the guy comes out the other end, he basically crashes his car right in front of a couple of cops who come over and start, like, testing him for driving while intoxicated, because he's got this wild story about something is chasing me, something was attacking me, but it's invisible, you can't see it. All of this, by the way, prefaced with Professor Brainerd turning to his dog Charlie, who's in the car with him, and saying to him, Charlie, you've always seen me as a gentle, mild-mannered college professor, but now you're about to see what a woman can do to a man. So there's some of those backwards gender dynamics we were talking about.
Well, and like you also have another big morally dubious scene as well.
Yeah. You know what? You're right. That's the second most morally questionable decision. So he can't get his fiancée to listen to him. Can't get the president of the university to listen to him. Nobody's listening to him.
Except Charlie.
Yes. So he goes to the phone and calls the Pentagon.
Smart.
Because he's like, hey, you know who would be interested in floating rubber, a source of free energy and propulsion? The government. He's right. And in particular, well, he doesn't start out calling the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
He basically calls the White House switchboard. Says, I have this thing, and they're like, who would be interested in it? What would this advancement benefit? And he's like, oh, anything like agriculture. Department of Agriculture? Okay. And they connect him to the Department of Agriculture. And he gets bounced around until he winds up at the Pentagon, where they only take his call because he happens to have the same last name as a senator who sits on the Appropriations Committee.
This all sounds super accurate.
Yes.
I was like, be it that I've done a few Department of Defense contracts and stuff like that. I'm like, this all sounds legit.
So because he's Professor Brainerd and Senator Brainerd is on the Appropriations Committee, they're like, oh yeah, we should definitely take this guy's call. And he tells them, I've got this great thing, you guys should come and see it, I'll demonstrate it to you. And they say, oh, well, we'll see if we can get someone out there. And it's this new meeting that's supposed to be like all of the branches of the military are finally coming together and putting old rivalries aside and everything like that. But of course, they all independently make the decision of they're going to sneak out there and meet him independently. Okay.
They all want a piece of that sweet, sweet pie.
Yes. So here's Professor Brainerd still chasing his girlfriend around, and he decides he's going to go to the dance. There's a big dance going on at the college, and he goes to the dance in flubber shoes so that he can show off and show up his romantic rival, who is like the king of ballroom dance in addition to being a professor of romance languages.
I feel if I know anything about, these really highly intelligent, smart people, using your inventions for petty reasons is probably a very human reaction.
Yeah. But he manages to, capture the attention of everybody because, he's Fred McMurray. So he's already, 6.5 feet tall. And he's bouncing up in the air, up and down over the heads of everyone on the floor. And also still managing to pull off some really good dance moves while he's doing it. So he gets a lot of attention from the students and everything. And the military representatives all show up at the same time at the dance.
So, I hate to cut our recap. a little short. But, you haven't really talked a whole lot about musical numbers or how you change it. And, I mean...
You are 100% right, yes.
Like, I'm really loving the recap, but I'm also like, well, this just sounds like, well, this was the movie.
Yes,
so.
this was the movie. We should move on from this was the movie. All right, because in all honesty...
Because if you got Disney Plus, you can find it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you've got Disney Plus, you can find it. All right, so let's talk about... Okay, of course we have our opening number. We mentioned that. We're going to have acoustic energy. The principles of acoustic energy, which is going to set up Professor Brainerd as kind of like the jazzy, cool professor. Like, the kids like him because he's a little bit weird and he's got crazy ideas.
Back in the 90s, we called him by his first name and he wore a leather jacket.
Hello. Either that or he's really cool. Lola's in the shot. Hey, look at that. Hi, goodbye.
No.
Or he would be Bill Nye.
Yeah.
You set him up as like a Bill Nye sort, who's like really loved because he's leaned into being such a egghead. All right? But he's still jazzy and got all the great crazy ideas and things like that. I think you keep the third wedding being missed.
Mm-hmm.
I think you remove... I want to do something with the fiancé that I don't want her to just be a secretary.
Mm-hmm. Well, she could be somebody else in the department.
I think she could be somebody else in the department. Or I think you could bring her into yet another discipline. Draw something else into this.
Or she could be, having worked in federal research, she could be one of the monitors or contractors or something like that.
Or she could be the grant writer for the department. That she's been like handling his grants for him all this time, sort of thing. So she's got a little bit of experience. Actually, I like that idea because she would have experience with having to turn his notes into something that somebody else could understand.
Or, it would be really great because this is what happened in a lot of the departments I worked for, is so you would have the scientists, and then you would have, like, the journalist marketing person who was on the board. Where it's like, well, I'm not an engineer, but I'm here to tell everybody else why your engineering marvel was so great. Mm-hmm. And so they had to, like, be part of all, like, the research notes and the research meetings and see research being performed, but then they would also have to, like, call all the stuff, and that would also make it doubly frustrating why he can't get her attention to tell her about it. Not only because he loves her and he wants to tell her about it, but also because it's like, you're the person who's supposed to tell people about my new invention. Social media it up. Tweet it. Because scientists don't do that. They're thinking lofty thoughts. They're not here speaking to the public about why it's great. They just need to keep going.
Yeah. Which could actually be like an additional source of frustration in their relationship with each other, is if you could just put it into ordinary language. If you could just explain to me what it is you're doing. I have so much trouble. I just have to shoot video of you and post it on YouTube because nobody understands you when you talk.
Or I think if you could just create the things you always talk about, which is a constant source of frustration with both of us with each other.
Yes.
is sometimes you have great ideas and you talk about, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, nothing ever comes of it. Just make one thing that I can be proud of sharing with the world instead of being like, yep, another year has passed and Dr. Brainerd did nothing.
Yes, that sort of thing. So, which can be a great song between them when he misses the wedding. And, with him trying to be like, but I have done something, and her being like, but I haven't seen anything, sort of thing.
Like, you keep saying, you do, and...
Yeah. She can have the same reaction she had in the movie when he tries to, like, bounce flubber to show her, of like, a rubber ball, that's what you've invented, a rubber ball, yay, So I think you have that. I think you have a little bit of musical duet with the romantic rival and the fiancé so that we can build sort of the idea of they've known each other for years. And even like Brainerd is the guy who swept her off her feet and took her away from this guy in the first place, sort of thing. I'm trying to think of there's a specific song I'm trying to think of. But basically it could be a thing like like Roger Rabbit and Jessica Rabbit of he makes me laugh sort of thing. And then I think you introduce the flying car, because the flying car is an important plot point. It's not just, look how awesome our flying car is. You introduce the flying car, you introduce the banker and his son, and you introduce the sort of crookedness of the banker betting against the college and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I think your end of the first act I would put as the basketball game. I could see the basketball game being the big closing number for Act 1. And then picking up at the beginning of Act 2 with the aftermath of the basketball game.
Yeah.
Because one of the plot points with the basketball game is he gets caught in the locker room and basically turns it into, well, I just wanted to come back here because so many of you boys are my students too. I have some words of inspiration for you. And he, gives him like a thing about, get out there, give it all you got, and whatever you put into it, I guarantee you're going to get twice as much back. Which is him talking about the flubber, but it's very inspirational. And then later the coach actually credits Brainerd with, well, he said something to the boys that just really lit a fire under him. So I think you could set that up. And what I have in my mind, I'm toying a bit with the song. But I would want to build the song around. I think I would have his speech be that whatever you put in, I'll get you. And then I would have him be like, when life tosses you a ball, you all know, you might as well bounce. And that would be the song, would be you might as well bounce. So you'd have, and it would be a great opportunity for effects and rigging and things like that, and choreography in midair, with the basketball players going all over the stage and being like, you might as well bounce.
It's like in High School Musical, the series,
yes.
where they had a rigging for like no reason.
Yes.
For Get Your Head in the Game. Disney, you've already done it. It's an easy sell.
and you know that we've talked about this before. They've already figured out how to rig a theater for Spider-Man, so...
Well, yeah, and they did Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, so they've done a flying car.
Yeah,
okay.
So you've got... I think there's plenty of... And I like the idea of a song of you might as well bounce.
Fun.
All right?
Well, the one thing that I will say is we're getting into, like, the major villain in Act 2 is the banker and everything.
Yes.
And we didn't kind of get to it in the recap, so I'm just going to mention it real quick here, is how he was basically kind of like death to all capitalists, pretty much, was like his justice. Like, oh, well, he's in trouble. Nah.
Yeah.
And so I think you have a really good idea of how to redeem that character and to redeem the son and not make the professor quite so murdery.
Yes. Because, well, let's just, for a second, talk about... I think the plot line for the second act would follow the film plot line fairly well. I'd want to do something other than him trying to run his rival off the road, because I don't want him to quite be
You want more of a
murderer.
good-natured prank.
Yeah, I want good-natured prank. So I think something like replacing the guy's mattress with a flubber mattress or something like that. Something crazy that you can get a good effect on stage out of. You could even maybe get a good musical number out of the prank without it being like, and he totally endangered that guy's life. But yeah, with his car winds up being stolen by the banker who sees it flying. Stolen at a time when he can't demonstrate it to the military anymore. He thinks he's going to be able to demonstrate it, but they replaced his Model T with another Model T that doesn't even run. So it embarrasses him in front of the military. They walk away thinking he's just some nut. And he goes to the banker's office, convinces him, oh, I've seen reason, I want to share my invention with you, gives him flubber shoes, and encourages the banker to leap out the window. Now, of course, the banker does not go splat because he's wearing flubber shoes. Instead, he starts bouncing, like really high up in the air. And there's the professor and his fiancée, who's now on his side, being like, oh, we'll help you get down, we'll show you how to stop. if you just tell us where the car is. And he says, it's in my storage. I have it in my storage warehouse now. Get me down from here. And they're like, oh, you'll... and they're like, oh, of course. And they get in the car and drive off. Which I'm like, he knows Flubber just bounces higher and higher each time. That's cold-blooded murder. So the way they resolve it in the movie is the entire community standing around and being like, we don't know what we're going to do. His son gets the football team and gets the football team to tackle him as he hits the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said, we want to make Professor Brainerd less murdery. Less murder from our protagonist is always a good thing. So I think that what we have is, instead of the son waking up and discovering it on his own, you have the professor on his way out, instead of just driving away cold-bloodedly, he, rings the student's phone. And he says, hey, you need to come out here and see what your father's doing. And the kid comes out, it's like, what's going on? Professor Brainerd is like, you know what? You can figure this out. You were always bright. You just never applied yourself. You can stop your father from bouncing. I'm going to give you an A. And then he drives off. And so you have the son out there with his father bouncing up and down, being like, Dad, did you hear? All I have to do is stop you and Professor Brainerd will give me an A.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think the son has to be there because
Yeah.
I got a personal bias.
Yeah.
I don't think phones work real well on stage.
Good point. So some way that the son is out there.
I think the son has to be part of stealing the car. I think the son has to be in the office.
Well, he is part of stealing the car in the movie.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, he can be in the office. He can be part of the meeting. All right, so then we get into... We can have a big musical number. Think of in Christmas Story, the musical, the Flick getting his tongue stuck to the pole.
Yeah.
You have that sort of big musical number with the entire town coming out and the fire chief coming out and everything like that. And at the end of it, you have the son gets the football team to tackle his father.
Which I said it would be really going over Newton's 3 principles in song. Like, an object of motion will stay in motion until another object acts upon it.
Yes.
And that would be like the musical and I'm
Yeah.
I think it'd be cute.
And then you can have the professor being like, you learned from my class and you applied it creatively. That's the important part.
You're like a very Bill Nye type of good job.
Yes. And then I think that you can link that into the demonstration of it to the military. That you could even have, the military heads are still in town. They, got a hotel for the night. They've heard about this guy is bouncing up and down in the middle of town, so they're there.
And be like, oh boy, it took 30 guys to stop one guy? That's amazing.
And that's when the flying car comes in with the professor, which takes care of a big problem with the movie that a significant part of it is this car chase scene. That's when the professor flies in, and you have him talking to the boy about, you applied this creatively, and the military being like, hey, it took 30 strong men to drag that one guy down. What? Tell us more about what you've invented in this flying car. And then from there you can get into the finale with, moving into the president sends his regards and a wedding scene and flying off in the car with the sign on the back that, has just married written on it, except that they've crossed out just and they put finally married sort of thing. That sort of thing, and that's where I would end it. Which, I'm going to throw this out there real quick. I feel is a great edit for the movie. Because the movie ends with a third act that is an extended montage of the flying car flying all over the world. Until it arrives in Washington, D.C., where it is nearly shot down by the military. But he manages to land on the White House lawn. And then we get the president doing a press conference about, all nations will share in this new invention sort of thing. I feel like compacting it, putting the military leaders there in the town square scene, can take away some of the awkwardness of that ending and give us a nice big number to lead us into the finale of Finally Married.
Yeah, great.
All right, that's the show.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, honestly, I think it kind of fits with what Disney's done in the past. I mean, like I said, they've had Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, they've had Mary Poppins. I even think it kind of fits in with like other things that are like Finding Neverland or some other musicals that we've seen. So it makes a lot of sense. I think that it's a really kind of like great untapped property that you found there for a musical.
Yeah, and I think there are things you can play with that you can see.
I think I'm gonna sneeze.
All right.
That's why I look a little weird.
It's all right.
Listening.
It's all right. But yeah, this show has been tapped a few times. Like we talked about, there's the Harry Anderson version, there's the Robin Williams version. But it is one of those properties that I don't think Disney has done a lot with. And I think at times they've been a little bit clumsy in how they handled it. I don't want to say clumsy because clumsy implies they did wrong, but it's not something that has been handled as well as other properties, like we were talking about Teen Beach Movie last time. But I think it is one that still has a lot of opportunity, and I think right now we do need sort of that message of like, listen to science, think about things realistically, but also
globally.
Creatively.
Like, we want to be in a position where Americans are saving the world. And I
Yes.
think that that's kind of the nice thing is, like, an American who was smart and used his brain, even though he's not a perfect person, could still give something back to the world and make us all better off for it.
And even the idea of encouraging, I like the idea of redeeming the son by being like, you've always been a smart kid, you just need to apply yourself. And then being able to be like, yes, you saved your father's life, even though your father wants to destroy this college and stole my invention. And then being able to give the father some sort of either a redemptive arc or a comeuppance arc.
Yeah. What do you think? Let us know in the comments down below.
Would you see a show like this? Would you not see a show like this? Do you want me to write a couple of these songs and come back with a couple of the songs, and then you'll make your decision?
Yeah, I mean, heck, if you donate some Ko-Fi dollars, Glenn will write a song.
Oh, yes.
I'm putting him to work.
All right. All right, so next week we are going to start our new theme, which is musicals based on podcasts.
Yay! And I think I'm doing Welcome to Night Vale first.
I believe that's the first one,
so,
yes.
yeah, I better listen to it.
Yes, she's doing Welcome to Night Vale on Wednesday. I'm doing My Favorite Murder on Saturday. So
Wednesday's also the day of my therapy appointment, so hey! It'll be a good day.
All right, so I guess, do we
That's
have
it.
anything else we need to talk about?
I think we've talked out. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm fading fast. I need to go get a coffee.
All right, Sarah, everyone, this is my mom, Sarah. Sarah, everyone. She says that she would see a show like this.
Yay!
What do you guys think? If you're
I
catching
like it.
this on YouTube in a little bit, make certain you leave it in the comments below. Like, subscribe. That's Carl, everyone. Carl is my dad. He says,
Yes,
thanks for the Flubber Show.
Write a concept album. Yes, we'll all tell Glenn to write
You
the
know what?
concept album. I like it.
Not a bad idea. I will do a concept album. I will make a pop concept album for this. Because I can do a concept album. I can do inspired by.
I was going to say, even if it's like 4 to 6 songs.
Yeah.
That's a concept.
Well,
I dig it.
we've got You Might As Well Bounce is definitely on there. We've got The Principle of Acoustic Energy. Yeah.
Yep.
We've got 2 songs
You got
right
the
there.
flubber rap, the creating
We've got
flubber
the
rap.
Creating Flubber Rap. And then having something to do. It's going to be a concept album.
I think
but
having something to do
for
with stopping the guy.
Yeah, something for the village song of stopping the guy from bouncing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 songs, yeah, I dig that. I think he can put it up on SoundCloud. I think we can direct people to it. Thanks, Carl and Sarah. I appreciate the encouragement. Getting him back to work.
Thank you, Mom and Dad. For those of you who haven't figured it out yet, watching our streams or videos, every time we say Bristol is checking in, that's my mom and dad. So.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
I'm off to go get some caffeine because
Yes.
I am going to need to take a nap otherwise. We got a lot of stuff to do. We're still
Mhm.
setting up the house.
We got a kitchen to set up today. Yeah.
Got to go buy paint. We got a lot of things. So we love you.
All right,
Thank you
love
so
you
much
guys.
for tuning in. We look
And-
forward to seeing you on Wednesday.
Yes, and until Wednesday, make sure you take care of yourself because, we're not there to take care of you. All right?
Bye.
Bye, guys. We've got to fade to our title. Fade to our title. Cross, fade. Cross.